U luistert naar Business Radio van op het FTI SuperNova event in de Waagnatie in Antwerpen. Zo dadelijk praat ik met een absolute wereldexperte op het gebied van AI, Nina Shick, de founder van Tamang Ventures. We gaan het onder andere hebben over de gevaren van generatieve artificiële intelligentie. A warm welcome, Miss Nina Shick. Can I call you Nina?
Of course.
Thank you so much. Can you describe what you believe are the most significant ethical changes we face today in the development and application of generative AI?
Well, I think to answer that question, we need to take it back to first principles and understand what is artificial intelligence anyway. When we talk about generative AI, it's actually just semantics. It's just a phrase to refer to AI's new capabilities. And actually, what is happening here is that through accelerated computing power and the availability of data and the massive breakthroughs in AI models and architecture over the past decade, we're entering what I like to call a new industrial revolution where the product isn't going to be electricity or food. It's going to be intelligence, because all that's happening with these systems is that computers are churning through masses and masses of data and information. And if intelligence can be understood as the ability to look through information and then make decisions, to create something, to predict something, and that's already unfolding with computer intelligence. So the impact on the world is going to be profound, just like any other kind of industrial revolution. So when you start talking about ethics, I mean, it's huge. Because this applies to every single industry, every single society, and every single human.
In your opinion, is AI becoming the dominant force in the corporate world, or are corporations still in control of how AI technologies are developed and used?
I think that AI is becoming a dominant force in the enterprise world insofar as business understands that it needs to build from a AI first principle, right? So if you have systems that are just as capable, just as intelligent as kind of knowledge workers, then every single business needs to have command over artificial capable systems, right? So it's a very important business imperative, but I don't think that AI is actually autonomously taking over business, if that's the question. So businesses who want to survive will be harnessing the power of AI, and those businesses who don't simply won't be able to compete, right? So I think there's a penny drop moment or a aha moment that if you want to survive as a company in the 21st century, you need to harness the capabilities of AI, just like we've been through that, where businesses had to become digital, right? And you had to embrace the internet and all of the other kind of earlier technologies associated with computing.
Okay. How do you assess the impact of AI on democracy then, particularly concerning fair elections and the spread of misinformation?
So this is a really great question, because this actually was my entry point into artificial intelligence. My background is in geopolitics. I used to work with global leaders on election integrity, on information integrity, on election interference. And there were a lot of risks and I mean concerns. I was literally the first one to write the book called Deepfakes on how synthetic or AI-generated content could be used at scale to manipulate elections, to undermine democracy. And that is still a really potent risk and one that we all need to be aware of. But I think more broadly, this is indicative of the fact that, you know, as synthetic content or AI-generated content is created at scale, we have to deal with a problem that predates AI, and that's declining trust in public institutions, in political systems. And I think this predates AI because if you start to think about what is trust, and can we trust our leaders, and can we trust our public institutions, decades of research have shown that it can be distilled down to three components. To be trustworthy, you need to show that you're competent, that you have integrity, and that you're benevolent. You don't want to do any harm. And predating AI, if you think about how seismic the changes have been in our world and our economy and the society, just kind of in the information and internet age, we no longer have faith that our institutions or leaders can actually deal with the scale of the challenges that are ahead.
Exactly. What
So-
role should government play then in regulating AI to ensure it benefits society as a whole without stifling innovation?
That's, of course, the age-old question. How do you balance regulation with innovation? And I would actually say that the first thing any nation state needs to do is to own its own sovereign AI. And what I mean by that is, if you think of artificial intelligence, again, the new kind of thing that we're producing is intelligence itself, then every country needs to actually build AI infrastructure and to refine and codify their data so that that can become the basis of their own sovereign AI. So by doing that, you can also build regulations, you start engaging with the technology, you start to understand, the best way to regulate or build safely is by actually building. It's very, very difficult right now when you start to think about, regulators or policymakers who are trying to go into the AI space. And often there's just this wide chasm of understanding, right? You need to understand the limitations and the possibilities of the associated technologies before you start regulating. And more important than that, you need to own your own sovereign AI, because by owning the sovereign AI, you support the ecosystem in your own country, So I'm very keen to see governments doing more in terms of R&D, in terms of investments. Regulation is important, but the flip side of the coin is just as important in my view.
Definitely. Yeah. When I hear you, it also seems this is going to take years. Way too long. Way overdue.
The regulatory stuff. Yeah. I mean, what you see emerging globally is very, very different markets. And I like to think of those entities or nation states who understand the importance of this moment, of actually owning the infrastructure. Those will probably be the countries or the companies who are the most influential going forward, right? Because if you own the infrastructure for intelligence, you own the production of intelligence, you're going to become immensely powerful and immensely wealthy. And what you see happening is looking at it from the perspective of a nation state, very different approaches. So in Europe, we've tended to focus on regulation, which is important, but it can't be the only thing we focus on. In the Middle East, for instance, where in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, there's an understanding they need to diversify their economies away from oil into high-tech economies. There's been lots of strategic initiative by the government, including a recently announced $40 billion fund by Saudi Arabia to invest into AI, because they want to own the core infrastructure. Just today, there was an announcement from the US government that it is going to be supporting Intel, a chip maker, with $8.5 billion of investment so that the semiconductor industry, the chip industry, can be more US focused, right? Right now it's outsourced to Taiwan. So you see strategic long-term thinking by certain nation states. I'd put the Gulf states in there, China in there, I'd put the United States in there, but I haven't seen enough of that in terms of actually building and owning the infrastructure from Europe.
Okay. Can AI exacerbate cyber unrest and ethnic tensions, you think? And if so, how can we mitigate these risks?
Of course it can, but on the flip side, it can also be used as a defensive mechanism in cybersecurity. And with ethnic tensions, I mean, you don't need AI to exacerbate ethnic tensions. My background in mis and disinformation, we saw how, for instance, very, very brutally, very awfully in the mid-2010s, Facebook was used as a platform to exacerbate ethnic tensions just through the spread of false information, because you can scale the spread of mis and disinformation online. And you saw things like proper ethnic cleansing being unleashed in places like Myanmar as a consequence of that. So I think it predates AI. AI used by bad actors will absolutely amplify them and give them more power, which is why it's even more important that if you're working on the defensive side, whether you're building a cybersecurity company or whether you're hoping to protect the rights of ethnic minorities, you absolutely grasp the technology and understand how to use it too as part of your defense.
Meanwhile, there's also the fun part, because this week Google and Apple announced that Apple will launch generative AI in its device still this year, while the competition like Samsung had already Gemini embedded in their stuff. You think that's just okay? It's good for our videos and for cutting and for the masses, Or is this even that part of AI is worrisome?
Look, I think what's happening here is that as it becomes easier to do this because computing power becomes cheaper, there's more and more data. From a consumer perspective, you're going to see this in your devices, right? In everything, your PC, your mobile phone, all these capabilities to generate content, to make videos, to be able to search your database. So for instance, Apple has been very slow on this, but already with Google Android phones, because of kind of AI models they were building, if you search for like dog, you can see the pictures in your photo reel that have a dog in it, and Apple, I think, has been pretty slow. And that's why they need to partner up with Google right now to bring these capabilities to consumer devices. But the top line here is that these capabilities, this intelligence, this ability to instruct AI to do things for you, doesn't just sit at the domain of the nation state or a very powerful big tech company. These capabilities are going to be in our hands, billions of consumers. And the first example of that is for those of us who have, for instance, ChatGPT on your phone, as an app. I use it all the time. Sometimes I come to an event and I want a briefing on the event and the city, and I can just ask ChatGPT and it'll tell me what I need to know immediately. So these capabilities are going to be in the hands of billions of people around the world.
Is it too easy?
Is what too easy?
The use of that kind of devices generated by AI?
In the sense that it might make us lazy?
Yeah.
This is a philosophical debate, which I have pretty strident views on. So people are concerned, oh, well, if AI can do everything, it can do your kids' homework, it can organize your diary for you, then we're not going to do anything. We're going to be super, super lazy. And I think that has a very limited view of human imagination. If you look at our history and technologies that have powered innovation and progress, I don't think there's an end point, right, where we try to stop innovating, where we try to stop building. It's just that if you can do more with less, suddenly the potential of what's possible opens up in a way that just hasn't happened before. And a really good way to think about this is in the context of education. Right. So right now, you might hear lots of debates about, oh, my kid is using ChatGPT to do their coursework. They cheated. They shouldn't use AI. I say absolutely not. We have to reconsider education itself, because if a large language model can do just as well as a human in standardized tests, then obviously we're not judging human intelligence in the right way. If anyone can do a standardized test, then what really matters is resilience and creativity and the ability to work with others.
We're having a great time here at Business Radio discussing AI with Nina Shick, founder of Tamang Ventures and global AI expert. We're taking a quick break and we'll be right back. We gaan er even uit, maar zij zo bij je terug met meer Nina Shick, de founder van Tamang Ventures. Straks menselijke robots en nu grotere zorgen. Tot zo.
Business Radio, live from FTI SuperNova. Life's a venture.
U luistert nog steeds naar Business Radio vanop het FTI SuperNova Festival in de Waagnatie in Antwerpen. Ik praat verder met Nina Shick, founder van Tamang Ventures en AI-experte. According to you, what dangers does AI pose in an already unstable geopolitical climate, especially regarding international relations and security?
So, I think that we live in a very volatile world, right? We see that every day with the crisis in the Middle East, with, the war just on our European borders between, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and the consequences of that with regards to energy, with regards to food security. So we live in a disrupted world already. And I think when it comes to risks regarding to artificial intelligence, but one of the main risks in my view is that this is accelerating so quickly that it takes society a little bit of a while to catch up. And that isn't just to do with AI, it's to do with exponential technologies. This point I was making about how, as citizens, we already feel a massive declining in trust in our public institutions and our leaders and our governments, because we don't feel that they're up to the challenge of the time. right? I actually also think AI offers some of the solutions to help fix some of the biggest world problems that the world is facing, whether that's to do with climate change and sustainability, to global food insecurity. But I think for me, the risks are more around who controls this technology and how do we ensure that it isn't centralized so that the capabilities of intelligence can be tapped into by everyone, that it isn't monopolized or centralized. And then second, how do we as a society deal with what is unfolding, the reality of the 21st century, which is probably a period in history where we'll experience more change than everyone that came before us in a very short order of time.
Any idea if there are potential psychological impacts of prolonged exposure to AI-driven content and interaction on human well-being?
So I have, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't have any data or, studies to refer to here. But perhaps the point I can make is if you consider the history of general purpose technologies, and by general purpose technology, I mean a technology that enables other technologies that transform society. So fire is a good example of a general purpose technology. The advances of the Industrial Revolution is another kind of example of a general purpose technology, is that they're tools and products and we use them, but they also change us, right? They cause us to evolve even on a biological, anatomical level, just like the invention of fire. We changed the way we cooked food, so our digestive tracts evolved in a completely different way. Our society was structured in a completely different way. So yes, I'm sure that when the dust settles and we do the studies, we'll find that modern computers and now artificial intelligence has some kind of impact on human evolution, on the way that we perceive the world, on the way that we think of ourselves. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a net negative, but is it going to change us from an evolutionary perspective? I think so, yes. But we don't know what that looks like yet because we're just in the beginning of it.
As we edge closer to creating machines with human-like intelligence, what are the primary ethical considerations that we should address immediately?
I think we immediately, and there is more and more research around this, we need to build AI, quote unquote, safely. And by that, because the training data is very important to machine learning systems and to AI in general, because it's basically just a system that's trained on a huge swathe of data. So when that data is curated and refined in order to train the system, how do we mitigate and correct for any biases in the data? How can we be transparent about the process? And this is also an evolving field of study. Because if you want accountability, you need to understand how the system came to one decision or another. And currently, AI is still kind of a black box technology. So a lot of work is going into biases and building the data sets, but also into AI transparency. If these systems are going to be integrated in our day-to-day lives, we need to understand how certain decisions were made. So how do we account for that?
How does Tamang Ventures, your company, approach the challenge of creating ethical AI? And what framework do you use to evaluate the potential impact of your project?
So I think your frameworks need to be different based on your industry and what you're doing, right? So I have a small startup. We're very lean, we're very agile, so we can move fast and rather than break things, make things, and lean into every AI capability that we can harness, right? Because our risk is very, very low. So using ChatGPT, using other tools, content generation tools, using machine learning systems to optimize our operations. But of course, if you're a bigger industry who works in, healthcare, in retail banking, and you have access to consumers' data or access to, very private data, then you have to ensure that before you do anything, you kind of look at what the potential risk is and you mitigate that. So the response to that is it really matters what you're doing, how big your organization is, but ultimately you have to kind of lean in because otherwise you won't be able to compete.
You focus on education a lot. What steps should be taken to educate and prepare the next generation for a future where AI is going to play a central role in their lives?
So I have young children, and I think fundamentally this comes down to, I'm thinking they're 2 and 4, and I'm thinking about,
All right.
you know, their approach to education, their kind of path to hopefully being successful, happy adults. And all I can be is kind of a guiding light to help them make the right decisions. But already I'm starting to intuit that perhaps the systems, the conventional wisdom that we grew up with, that you need to go to university, that you need to be trained in a vocation, you know, or if you want to do well, become a coder, like all of that is being challenged in such seismic ways through the integration of AI in our lives. I mean, why would you need to go to university and pay, I don't know, if you're in the US, pay $300,000 when the knowledge you get on that course, you can already get from a large language model, right? So I'm of the view that if you're entrepreneurial, if you want to start your company, if that's the type of person you are, then there are more opportunities than ever to just do things yourself, powered with artificial intelligence. So perhaps the way we think about institutional knowledge and training itself really needs to change.
The development of generative AI is unstoppable, and we better be right awake while that is happening. Thank you for your insights, Nina Shick. Ik dank ook de luisteraars. Het bekijken kan via de website en LinkedIn. Ciao.
Thank you.